Hi everyone, it's Monica from Tailor Made Cards for You. Today I'm here to share with you a Christmas card that I created using one of the new die cuts from the Tim Holtz collection. I'm also going to be using some fun Idea-ology that came out this Christmas season. As everyone knows, he came out with some paper dolls and he came out with a set for Halloween and now for Christmas. There's also some new metallic stickers that have some holiday sayings, as well as a new paper stack. So let's go ahead and pull out all of our tools and get started. Now the focal point of my card today is going to be this new Sizzix die cut from the Tim Holtz collection. It came out this Christmas and it's going to be a favorite, I can guarantee you. It is so detailed and intricate, and it makes for a great vintage card. Your set comes with many pieces. You're going to get the Merry Christmas script sentiment, and you're also going to get some pieces to decorate this retro card. You also get some snow banks as well as some Christmas trees to decorate the background. But what's really great about this die set is not only can you use it to create a scene, but the pieces are also great for other cards as well. So I think you're going to really get a lot of bang for your buck on this die set. Now to save time, I did put my little retro card die set together before I actually sat down to put my card scene together. The card does take a bit of time to put together because there's so many pieces that need to be glued together to create this little car. So it might be a good idea to have a few of the cars already put together before you sit down to create your scene. Now sometimes when you're making a scene card, you're going to use lots of elements that will create weight to your card. So it's not a bad idea to have a couple of layers to begin with. This will help to hold your pieces in place and make sure that your card doesn't fall over. Now the two pieces that I'm going to put together are going to create the snowbanks, and you can create these two snowbanks using one of the dies. You're going to use the top portion and the bottom portion of your cardstock, and then they just go together to create your little bank. So for ease, I went ahead and adhered those two together, and then I added the one piece to the base of my card. And then I'm going to trim off the excess using my Tim Holtz Tonic scissors. Okay, so before we add the card to the card base, we want to go ahead and put our tree together. Now you can easily put a single tree on top of the card, but I wanted to create more of a 3D effect, so I cut a second tree and I folded it in half. And then I took some of my adhesive and glued the middle portion of the folded tree onto the first tree. And then I gave it a minute to dry. And then once it was securely together, I went ahead and added some more glue to the flat portion of the tree and added it to the top of my card. Now you're going to want to give it a minute to dry, because if you try to start working with the card too soon, your tree may fall off. It won't take too long to dry, but just give it a moment just so that way the tackiness of the glue is secure. Now to create a more realistic scene, I went ahead and I added some twine through the window of the car and around the tree, so that way it looked like it was tied securely onto the top of the car. You don't need to tie your twine too tight, because again, this is just for a visual effect, so you can have it a little bit loose, and that way the 3D effect of the tree doesn't get smashed down. And then once you have both twines tied securely in place, you can go ahead and adhere the base of your car to your snowbanks. Now to secure your car, you could easily use your tape runner, but I did use my multimedia mat to work as glue to adhere the base of my car to my snowbank. And then using my tweezers, I went ahead and added some of the other elements to my car. The little wheels are 3 pieces, and they do take a little bit of time to put together because you want to make sure that you get them centered correctly. I do highly recommend, when you are putting this card together, to get some nice tweezers to hold some of those small parts, because that really does assist you when you're gluing them down and placing small layered items together. Now there's also some other great elements that come in this die set to create a scene on your card. They have the Christmas trees for your background, and again, those are really thin, so you want to make sure that you have a good pair of tweezers to help in setting these trees in your background. And if possible, you're going to want to use some paper that's a little bit thicker, so that way it helps hold your trees in place. I think too thin of paper would probably end up tearing when you're pulling it out of your die cut, but that's just a recommendation. Now you could probably also use some distress oxides to color up these trees, but because they are so thin, I probably would recommend creating your colors onto some cardstock first and then cutting them out with your die cut. If you try to color up these little trees after die cutting them, you may end up tearing your trees. So just keep that in mind when you're putting your card together. Now, one thing that I don't have in my stash, but I think probably would have been really helpful, is a fine tip that could be attached to my multi-medium matte glue. I've seen these in several videos and I just haven't gotten around to buying one yet. But I think probably with the finer tip, it would have made it a lot easier to add my glue to these really thin trees. So as you can see, what I ended up doing is just using my finger to spread them around, and it did work fine. But if you're not one to get your fingers dirty, you may want to invest in one of those fine tip caps to go on top of your multimedia mat. All right, so once I had my trees nicely placed, I wanted to go ahead and put together my Merry Christmas sentiment. Now I had pre-cut this sentiment out on some gold paper that was a little bit thicker, so it was kind of nice to work with. And then again, I'm just using my multimedia mat to glue it down onto my cardstock. Now, one of the things, like I've said in the beginning of the video, is one of the tools you may want to use or have on hand is a pick, because being that these die cuts are so thin and so intricate, some of the little pieces do stick inside of the circles. So if you have your pick on hand, it's easy just to pick those out right before you glue them down. And then also, if you're like me and you're using your finger to spread your multimedia mat, you may want to have some sort of wet cloth or a baby wipe on hand, so that way you can wipe off your fingers and not ruin your project. That's one thing that I've done in the past before, so I just want to put that out there and make you aware of that if you are working with inks or any sort of glue, it's always a good idea to have some sort of wet cloth or a baby wipe to clean your fingers in between each process. Now, when you're die cutting your sentiment, your Merry Christmas sentiment, it does come in 3 pieces, or actually I should say 4 if you count the little dot on the exclamation point. You're going to get your Merry as 1 piece, and then your Christmas also as 1 piece. But the exclamation point comes in 2 pieces. It's your line and then it's your dot. So you want to make sure that when you are die cutting this, that you are aware of this, because it's so easy for it to stick to your big shot mat and forget about it. I actually had to go back and grab it off of my sheet, because when I went to put it together, I couldn't find it, and I searched all over my table for it, and then I realized it was still stuck to my mat. So just be aware when you are cutting out these small pieces that some of them are so small that they may stick to your die cutting machine. And it's a good idea, if you are cutting multiples at the same time, maybe get a little plastic bag or a little baggie to put some of your finished die cuts in, so that way you know you have all your pieces together when you sit down to put your project together. All right, so at this point I have most of my flat elements adhered to my card base, and now I want to go ahead and start adding some of the elements that might stick up a little bit or maybe a little bit wet and will need some time to dry. So before I do that, I typically like to add or glue my card base onto my white cardstock, so that way I know once I add my elements that are going to be a little bit wet, I can set it aside. So once I had the final touches on my flatter elements, dotting my I's and crossing my T's, I went ahead and brought out my white cardstock and adhered that to get ready to add some of my snow and some of my final touches. Now, there's a lot of products out there that would work great for snow, but one of the favorite items that I like to use is the Nuvo Glimmer Paste. And I picked this up last year and I love it. It is moist enough where it will go through stencils, but it's also thick enough where you can just put it right onto your card base. So that's what I'm doing here. I just got my little palette knife and I'm adding it to some of the snow banks. And then to add a little bit thicker snow, I just spread it on the bottom. Now keep in mind this is going to take a little bit of time to dry, and that's why I would recommend as this being one of the last items you add to decorate your card, because once you add this you probably want to put your card aside to let it fully dry. But of course I had to add a couple more items before I did that. I did want to add my little sentiment, and then I wanted to use one of my cute little paper dolls. I also wanted to add some white speckles to the top of the card to create some snow flurries, and I was able to accomplish that with some simple acrylic paint, and then I just wetted it down a bit with some water. Now you can use any sort of white medium. You could probably use distress paint as well. Actually that is what I went to go for in my crafting supplies, but I didn't have any on hand, so I went ahead and pulled out my white acrylic paint, and it worked just as well. All right, so my final items that I'm going to add again are my metallic stickers, and I'm going to choose one of the cute little sentiments on the holiday series that came out this year, and then I'm going to add a little character from the paper doll set. So I hope that you've enjoyed my process for putting together this Christmas card using the new Tim Holtz retro car die set. It is a good one. Don't get intimidated by it. It just takes a bit of practice and a bit of time to put it together. And if you're interested, I am going to have a tutorial up in the next couple of days on just putting the card together. So if you are interested in seeing the process of putting together this cute little retro card, be sure to head over to tailormadecardsforyou.com, where I will have links to all of my social medias as well as my YouTube channel, so you can check that out in the next few days. I'll also have links to all the products that I've used to create the card below. All right, everyone, thanks for stopping by.